Yes. For February 28th, we have a fairly hefty agenda this evening, which means I will try our best to keep us efficient. But still want to make sure we get all of our questions answered. We are blessed that we have members who are going to be leading our German trip to begin our meetings. And it's a special presentation. So if folks would like to join us, just give us a little background, that'd be fantastic. And then we see if board members have any questions. Is that okay? This is very board member, in your board docs, there is a one pager. I got that right this meeting. That gives us a little more information. We always ask folks who are leading an international trip to come speak to the board, just so we understand what's taking place, what the educational goals are, anything else you'd like to share with us. So first of all, just thank you for being here on a Tuesday evening. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you. So we are here to ask for approval for our biannual German exchange program. It's been on a little bit of a break since 2019 for understandable reasons, but we are confident, and our German counterparts are confident that it's time to start it back up. In fact, we had the first half of the exchange in October, so I'm sure some of you all saw our German students out and about in the schools and in the city. So what we're asking for permission, we're asking for approval is a 3-week exchange in July 4th through July 29th. We'd be taking 20 students on a homestay program in Germany. They are students in the German program with the goal of improving your German and getting a genuine taste of German culture. That kind of hits the high points.
Board members, any questions for our guests?
I'll just give a shout out to the excellence of this program, which my older daughter went.
Yes, in high school.
And the other is, I think 7, and they were just, I mean, they were 2010, something like that. And they were just, it's an exceptional program both ways, having the German students come here. The experiences my kids and her friends had were exceptional. And it really truly is an immersive homestay. They go to school, they go to parties. They get taken to various places. It's just a wonderful experience. And I thank you both for continuing it under such trying circumstances.
Well, David is now the coordinator, so I want to make sure that he gets the glory here. I'm just the
person that helps and answers all of my questions and thinks me through it all. Don't you guys? Don't tell yourself here.
one aspect of the trip that I think is Sean's computer. But I think it's really wonderful that you including a visit to Dachau. But also, I really applaud the sensitivity that you've expressed about how you will communicate clearly with the students about the emotional impact and to help them with that and even allow them to opt out. I think it's really important that it's being offered, but also really important that it's being offered with a very sensitive approach.
Right. I think it's, I think you know, that feature of German history is fundamental for any student of German. You can't escape it if this is something that you're going to pursue in any sort of long-term fashion, and it really shapes Germany today. But it is absolutely, as you say, it's a very emotionally heavy experience. And so, right, we take a lot of consideration in what is the impact for students, and are we prepared, and how can we be there to support them before, during, and after the experience.
Any other suggestion?
There's, so 20 students are going, how many students are going?
Right.
We remathed. My math was a little off. My brain had 21 and that's just what it said in my head forever. And it is 20,
It's 20, okay, and how many are currently enrolled in German?
all of them.
No, I'm sorry, how many German students are there at the high school currently?
That's no idea.
Okay. Over 100, is that
Yeah.
like, okay. And are there requirements, like you have to be a third-year German student?
So we do ask, we make it available for students at that third year and beyond, because it is a homestaying program. And the level of English accessibility in the home can't be guaranteed. So we need to make sure that our students going have a foundational knowledge that they can at least survive and they can negotiate, meaning in like I said, a meaningful way. Right, and so that's where we offer it. I think that's kind of the logical point. And usually for most students, that's that transition between the regents level, the kind of getting the regents at level 3, and that transition into the upper level aiming towards that AP.
Thank you.
Are you working with an organization as well?
But it goes to the German American Partnership Program, which is sponsored by Congress and State Department and the German Bundestag. And we are one of the oldest continuing exchange groups they have. We have been doing it since,
89.
yeah.
1989 was the first German exchange from Ithaca.
Does that mean any of the kids who our students will interact with might be coming back here? Or is it,
They already came.
oh, okay.
They
that's too
usually
many.
come in October because they can't do it during the school year.
Right, they have a school break in October, so they can do a week of break and they can kind of work that, so they're not missing as much school. We do it in July so that our students are missing no school here, but they get to catch the end of the school year in Germany. Lucky them, they get an extra 21 days of school or 15 days of school.
And that would be that 7:38. So they're really committed out of.
Time difference. Any additional questions for board members? Should we entertain a motion?
Sure.
Go ahead.
You, I move that this, do we have?
There is language in the agenda.
You motion.
To approve the international field trip to Germany from July 4th, 2023 to July 29th, 2023, as recommended by the superintendent.
Second.
Moved by Pat, moved by Moira, second by Pat. Any additional questions, conversations, discussion? All in favor? Motion passed unanimously. Enjoy the travel. Thank you so much for being here.
We greatly
Thank
appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule for us today.
Appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will continue with our agenda. Thank you very much. We will now move to public comments. And I will move to my colleague, Mark.
Okay. I am done.
I should sit here. I suspect.
And Brian, we'll be good. I will politely remind folks if we're to go.
You know, I am a college professor. I can only imagine where that rule came from. It will call me.
I can ignore the 3 minutes he has, so let's see what happens.
Oh, don't tell me that now, or I'll keep going. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you for letting me speak on this topic. So last week I shared with the board the findings of a short study that I recently did with my kids. We went around and visited the playgrounds at all 8 elementary schools, did a census of the playground equipment, the outdoor spaces, and the damage. And this was motivated by the impression we had that the outdoor spaces at BJM were maybe a little underserviced relative to the other schools. We came away with the impression that BJM is wildly underinvested relative to the other schools in the district. So BJM has the smallest total play space in the district, both overall and per student. It has the smallest grass area overall and per student. BJM has 0 large play structures. All of the other schools have at least 2, and many have 4 or more large play structures. BJM has 1 slide, and the slide comes up to my shoulder. The other schools all have 5 to 7 slides, and the list of disparities actually just goes on. So I think there are 2 ways to potentially remedy this. One is to rebuild the existing BJM playground. The second is to expand the BJM outdoor space to involve Marcos Flats. So Marcos Flats is 77,000 square feet of green space that sits literally across the street from BJM. It's owned by the district. And there's been conversations trickling along for years about how to more seamlessly integrate it with the BJM outdoor space. So I shared these findings with stakeholders in the community, and I've had a lot of feedback. One BJM teacher started crying talking to me about this. Another wrote to me, our playground is literally falling apart right before our eyes. I've had parents write to me saying this, when you put the evidence out like this, it's enraging. Others making really innovative suggestions for how to rebuild the play space. So I also know that there is broad support here for change at BJM. So at the Feb 16 facilities meeting, Karen Yearwood raised the issue of the BJM playground. Sean Bradwell and Eldred Harris have attended meetings of the BJM families together and pledged to help on this issue. I know that Lily Talcott has been in discussions with BJM leadership and parents about this topic. There's a group of parents at BJM that has been really systematically trying to have stakeholder conversations about this. And I'm sure there's lots of other people doing things on this topic of which I am not aware. But I think that what has happened is that this disparity has kind of slipped along and widened over time. And so I'm hoping that some hard evidence about the differences between BJM and the other schools could be motivational. Okay, lastly, I know that some of the playground spaces at the other schools have been supported by outside grants. I think that is awesome. BJM Families Together actually wrote a grant for the playground in the fall. It wasn't funded. But I also know that this district is very committed to equity, and I don't think that commitment should be outsourced to these third-party grant-making organizations that are making these kind of one-off grant proposal decisions. So we all know BJM is the most racially diverse school in the district. It has the highest percentage of students with disabilities. Also, along with Enfield, it has a much higher share of economically disadvantaged students than all of the other schools. So speaking just as myself, I'd really like to see more investment in the outdoor play spaces for those students so that they can get outside and have the same experience with other schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
For sure.
An excellent.
Add 2 more sentences.
And then virtually, we have Vanessa Pagens Turner.
Hello, everybody. Greetings. I'm so sorry I can't be with you this evening. I feel very fortunate to have gotten to sit in on this meeting as both a graduate of the 1995-96 Tuttlingen German exchange program, which was life-changing and wonderful, and I highly recommend. Thank you for supporting it. And also a graduate of BJM. So I am very grateful to all of you for the work you're doing. I'm here to report back on some community organizing work we've done around the Ithaca High School girls ice hockey team, which I spoke to you about last month and was recently cut. We've gathered 319 signatures, all of which came in a week from community members and Ithaca diaspora from around New York State, as well as from a few adjoining districts. In support of the reinstatement of the team. And I have shared it with Tricia shortly before the start of the meeting for you to review at your convenience. I reiterate that the team was an incredible and life-changing experience, as an opportunity to be athletes and have the chance to play a sport that is otherwise prohibitively expensive and difficult in terms of scarce ice time for many to play and participate in. I know you have a lot of things on your plate, and I just appreciate the consideration that you give to this. And again, a shout out to the high school seniors this year who weren't able to play a season this year. Thank you to all of you and have a good evening.
Thank you. Have Aubrey Spittle.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? I am online.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Similar to Nessa, I'm here to talk tonight about the IHS girls hockey team. I am a BJM parent. Here is my oldest, who is also a hockey player. And we wanted to thank you for hearing our concerns at the last time we came and spoke. I personally just would love to hear an update from the board on whether there's been movement on reinstating the team for next season. And I think there have been some conversations going on in the background. I would just love to hear what's happening on that. Again, just want to say how important the opportunity to play was for me personally. I know that my daughter here is also interested in playing for the high school one day. So thanks for all that you do, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you folks on this.
You better
other-
do it. 'Cause I want to play.
We're raising. Excuse her, she did not learn that from me. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Those are all the folks that we have signed up for public comments. Board responses. Karen.
Yes, so, thank you, Brian. We did see your detailed slides. It was, very impressive with you and your student. I was a big BJM parent from 2008 to around 2015. One of the first observations I had with that school, that it was a middle school and it was never designed as an elementary school in this within downtown area. So that's why there's not that land space compared to Caroline or even Northeast Elementary School. And I remember when I started at BJM, I believe some of the PTA and others were working with the principal and all, and they did get an outside grant and they designed the playground because it was a wooden structure prior to my children going, where I have to note too, I chose to go there. Yeah, that was not my home school for my children. And some of the designs that were created, as you noted, like even in one of your slides where children were on a crate, they were created for inclusive purposes, because there were quite a few children that were either in a wheelchair or had other physical disabilities. And so therefore, the slide that you had where the children were on a crate, they were created so that their wheelchair can go through, and they were created and designed that there were no bars across that, so that there could be an aid to help the child just explore and all. And it was also designed, I remember hearing about the design for pre-K and the kindergarten. There's a section for smaller students versus like the 4th grade or 5th grader. So it was designed for such a time as that, and it needed an upgrade and all. So which is something that we started discussing at facilities committee. And I have to look back at what I said, but I know I did say that I can't recall the person that was at the Dr. Lovac that was there, and she had stated about play and learn. And I said within this community, we had several play and learn sessions before. One was held at Southside Community Center because we have like some educators within the school district that talked about play and learn from the Ithaca Children's Garden, and as a result of like some of the BJM playground too. So we're definitely looking into that, and the facilities committee is someplace to share. And I do recall when I started at BJM about Marco's Flat discussion, they purposely, the community, the BJM community, the community at large, purposely did not want equipment at the Marco's Flat, like playground equipment. Reason why is quite a few community members said that they wanted an open field, especially parents from BJM at that time said the closest baseball field is at Cass Park. So let's bring it closer to the downtown area. So that's why that area was designed like that. And I know that we have to work on this within the city, access to make sure that students can cross from BJM safely with guided adults and all. So there's a lot of history as to how the playground was designed then, which I know that there are some of the staff that are still around, as well as what we do in the future as we look at all of the schools and the playgrounds.
Other board members. I saw Morris hand first, and I was gonna go around, so.
Right, well, I want to piggyback on what Karen was saying. I too was a BJM parent from 1988 to 1994. And it was also by choice. That was not my homeschool. My daughter has a 4-year-old, and so they go around to various playgrounds. And I actually had a conversation, and they were at BJM recently. When I was telling her about what you had sent to us, and I was expressing my concern. And when I said something about putting equipment at Marcos Flats, her reaction was no, leave it in open field, which I've now been told that is a notion that was expressed by a lot of people when the idea came up. So I am very interested in certainly, figuring out how things can be made better. And, your slideshow, made it clear that improvements need to be made.
Aaron and then Joe.
Thank you. This is absolutely amazing. And Mary, I was looking around to see if you were there because I was going to mention that, and can't remember which one, but in our Inclusion Leadership Council meetings, we've been talking a lot about accessibility. And in that, we've been talking about playgrounds in general and reviewing them. And when I hear you talk about BJM, it just really sparks adding that to the conversation because you have students with disabilities, and so often we talk about accessibility. And it's not just wheelchairs, you think about children eloping or darting across the street, and the street field is wonderful, but sometimes accessible means, like a safety fence to make sure there's no dangers and sensory needs. So I think that we will find a way to bring this up in our next meeting and just kind of add that to what we're reviewing and what we're doing. Because there are many, many good ideas and many great people working on these ideas. Thanks.
Ditto, we'll certainly have that be a big part of our next facilities committee meeting. I think there's at least 2 aspects to this. One is where we are now, who's looking at it, including the group of parents that has been interested, and also doing kind of a quick census of our own, perhaps using your data, looking at students, number of students in each school, as well as facilities available to them. So it's kind of on the back burner, but we can move it forward in terms of getting to Marcos Flats safely. We spoke a few months ago with Tim Logue about that, and I think it might be time for us to pick that up again and get some sort of crossing there. And that's something that can be done in a pretty straightforward way in my experience. So stay tuned, please come to the facilities committee meeting, and we can move on this, and we will continue to move on this. And thank you for your comprehensive and inspiring census.
I like spreadsheets.
I do really like spreadsheets, and I joked before you, I joked before you got here that could we just give you a master's in this now?
Any other board responses?
So I meant to add on the end about the hockey. First off, thank you for speaking. And secondly, I mean, we didn't have quorum last public meeting. I don't feel like we've discussed it at all. And I think, have we heard, we need to hear from Samantha a little, and there has not been anything.
There actually has, and I'll be happy to go.
Oh, there has, okay. Sorry.
I spoke to emails about it as well. So, my response is echoing what Karen has said. This has been an ongoing conversation. As we know, BJM, it's almost laughable to say this, but is our most quote unquote urban school, but I mean density of population, right? And so it was built during a different time period, almost exactly 100 years ago. I want to say close to that. And so now we're finding some different things taking place. We've had ongoing conversations with Tim Logue at the city to try to figure out what to do, and with a conversation with BJM community as well. Conversation about possibly closing the entire road down, which GAC has even wanted because of safety, and for those who pick up their young folks there, realize how difficult that is. I think as I said to you as well, my granddaughter's in the GIAC school program, so that's a playground that she uses every single day. Also had nieces that we took care of that were BJM folks as well. I like the approach that Dr. Lovac has, and I'm looking forward to inviting our community in terms of how we do a collaborative revamp, whatever that looks like. This may be, I just want to make sure that folks understand, we find ourselves at a very difficult time to make significant changes, given the fact that it's going to become a partial construction site for the next little bit as GF expands its program as well. And so partly what we're going to have to think about is what can be done soon and what is a long-term process to make sure that we revamp that space that meets the needs today and not when I was taking a part of this. I think when I say Karen, like 2010 was or maybe 2008 was the last time some of this conversation was taking place. So it's going to be an ongoing dialogue, looking forward to what it is. I think everyone appreciates the PowerPoint presentation and recognizes that it's a space that may not meet our needs today, and we'll see what that means moving forward. So we're very much looking forward to that. Elders, this about the playgrounds. I also want to speak about hockey.
It's about playground. Go. All right, our communities, we're fortunate that we live in a community that have a lot of it's dynamic, a lot of things going on, right? There's a model for what could possibly take place in Portsmouth. Took 6 or 7 years to develop that model, so it'd be ashamed to have the city pretend we're starting from scratch. Commons redesign went through the same issue. Parsons led the charge to have it done a certain way to get access there. Obviously, with GIAC and an elementary school, one of the primary concerns is going to be access to emergency. But it's not a state-owned building. There are temporary structures that could go up seasonally, even across the street, Marcus Flats. So yes, I was at that meeting. It's good to hear the parents be so passionate and educated about it. And I'll connect. But I'm not on the facilities committee. I'm happy to pop in and share any useful experience. But we've been here before. And the comments was far more significant project than one block of course.
Yes, looking forward to how that moves forward. To respond to hockey, I want to be exceptionally clear that the hockey team was not cut. I come from a football community where there are 100 and something young people who show up for modified football. And yet you look across the state and you need 17 players to field a football team. And community after community are not able to field their football team because of a variety of reasons. What happened here and with our athletic department is trying to find as many creative ways to make sure that we could have enough players to field the team. We looked at changing practice times, looked at changing practice locations. As folks may know, the places to find ice time are limited in this community, so you don't have many options, but that was one thing that was considered. A number of years ago, we put in place a process for 7th and 8th graders to play varsity sports, particularly contact varsity sports. We were trying to figure out how we could use that as well and invite younger folks to participate in the varsity team. And in addition, the board approved 2 mergers for varsity hockey and did significant outreach to other local school districts to find other folks to do additional mergers to make sure that we could field the team. That's part of the context board. The board, and not just the board, the athletic department, the district is committed to a hockey team next year. That's not off the table. The question becomes, how do we galvanize enough support to have enough folks to participate? And one last thing I'll say about, I am not a hockey player, if you all couldn't tell. But my brother-in-law has the benefit of one of his best friends who just had their jersey retired in LA in the Raptors and has a statue outside of the LA stadium. That hockey player stopped playing in the high school team in 8th grade. And from 8th grade on played club, because club is where the highest level of competition was. We are blessed to live in a town with such significant hockey talent that many folks choose to play at the highest competitive level. At this point in time, it's not interscholastic, but it's actually club hockey. So we are trying to put all these pieces together to make sure that yes, it's accessible. Folks have the option of playing at the highest competitive level. How do we merge with our other local communities and other local school districts to make sure that there are enough folks on the team? As we work together collaboratively with the petition that's signed and the number of folks love that energy to make sure that we can make this happen. And if I'm not mistaken, ice hockey time and the schedule has already been in the works for next season, fully anticipating. And a slight word of caution, we may find ourselves back here where there may not be enough folks to field the team. So I'm hoping that's not the case, but I want the community to be very clear. At no point in time did the district say we are not going to have a hockey team. That is not the way in which it happened. Samantha Little, who was on leave, but I know Mac Knight, the interim athletic director, I talked to both of them. They are both extremely committed in looking at as many other creative solutions as possible. And we invite the community to continue to help us try to find creative solutions. But that's where we find ourselves with hockey. I hope I captured that correctly. So, and look forward to future conversations and discussions about that as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, good folks. And up next is student reps. We are so good we didn't have a snow day today. We didn't see you in person. So do we want to start with LICS? Sarah, how you doing?
We can do that. It's kind of been a while. Me and Stella were in here last time because we were both under the weather. And then she's not here today because thank you for February break. She's been taking it in Florida. We're on a plane right now, so she can't be here. But I'm here. LICS, there hasn't been a lot happening, but I can tell you what is happening. Our bathroom renovations are like this close to being like officially done. Like they've been usable for a while, but like there's no longer people having to work on them. Our DC trip is officially happening. The funding we're done. We got the coffee sales, which thank you for many of you guys. Our art class and also with IHS, the kitchen theater has been going around and selecting artwork from a bunch of different of our classes, their classes, to present in the kitchen theater. LICS has been recently, we had a system called flags of where you could get a green flag if you're doing like really well, or like you did really well in presentation, your teacher was saying a green flag. And your teacher said a yellow flag and like, oh, you showed up late for class this entire week. Can we just think about that? And a red flag is like, hey, you're not meeting expectations right now, can you work on it? This system wasn't equitable. And so it was folded, I don't remember what year, but it's before COVID. And we were trying to find a way to fix it because our eval system is fantastic, but when you're having that smaller communication with the teacher that you don't really get from grades, it's a gap that's missing. We have been recently working on an app with Natty, our website, to kind of bring this back. This is an ASM, it's still in process, it's still getting made, we have funding for it, we're moving forward. And recently we've been discussing the idea of a sliding scale of different performance elements. And also having in-app communication with your teacher of just minor communications. There's going to be kind of a small part of the app, but the main focus is the sliding scale. Sorry, that's my phone. Trip selections is happening next week. It's kind of a big thing at LICS is our trips week. From 6th to 12th grade, students can choose a trip. It happens for the entire week. And students can, go camping or go canoeing or do an art project like silk screening. There's a bunch of different options. This year I am in the New Orleans trip, which you guys definitely know about. And so the students that are not choosing like a very focused trip like New Orleans or rock climbing, they will be choosing the trips. And regarding that, the people who ordered citrus is coming on the 16th. I will be here after school and I will have it for you. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys.
Thanks. Let's take a high school.
Yeah, so it's great to be back. It's been a while. This week, students returned from February break, and we're getting back into the swing of things. Before break, there was actually a significant amount of kids that were really sick, and there were a lot of students who were out of class, but the breaks seem to have been refreshing and students have come back feeling better. For some school news, there's a choir theme concert this Friday at 7:30 and a combined band concert with the middle schools on March 8th, next Wednesday at 7 p.m. So please come and hear some phenomenal music from our students. IHS has been supporting Black History Month through our IHS Week of Action. This work has been greatly appreciated and positively received by students. There's a Black Joy exhibition in front of CULT, and there was a presentation by Dr. Nia Nanzat. We were also really excited to hear about the return of the German trip, and students who came back from the Morocco trip last week also had a great.
Spring sports are gearing up to start on March 13th. 9 students will be traveling to Staten Island this week for the track and field state finals. Not nearly as much as when Mr. Trumbull was the coach, I should add. As Grace mentioned, Ithaca High School offers an amazing opportunity for children to go to Morocco through the Morocco Trip Club. It is an opportunity that is available to all Ithaca High School students. And after all the fundraising they've done this year, they went over February break. Recently, we discovered that when furniture from the schools that are no longer needed go to out of commission school in Danby. So Ithaca High School's tech wing is being renovated as part of the capital project. And that will lead to a lot of desks, tables, and chairs not being needed. Is there a possibility that all the furniture displaced can be donated? I think you have to like have something because it's public funded. No? Yeah.
We had a question about the doors to the J building at IHS. We spoke to Mr. Trouble about this, but he suggested bringing this up here. So the doors to J building are reversed compared to traffic flow. So the unlocked doors that allow students to enter the building are like all the way on the left. While the doors where students are supposed to come out are all the way on the right. So students that are trying to go in are colliding with students that are trying to come out because normally you'd walk on the right side. And this is one of like the highest traffic hallways in the school. It's basically how you get into the entire right side of the school. So we were wondering if there were any ways for that to be switched, reversed. And we also had some questions about bathrooms at IHS. So we're very happy that the G and H bathrooms are being redone, but some of the other bathrooms are in rather poor shape, particularly the E bathrooms. So we were wondering if there were any plans to renovate those bathrooms as well. And an aside, when is the construction of the G and H bathrooms planned to finish? Because I believe those were supposed to end around now-ish. So I was just wondering for an update on that. And then lastly, heating issues have been running like rampant throughout IHS. The orchestra room, for instance, prior to break was a toasty 86 degrees, but yesterday it was 59 degrees. So part of this is, of course, because IHS is an old building, but we were wondering if there's been any plans to repair heating issues or if that's a work in progress. Yeah.
Moving on, for a while, the 4 of us have been looking for an opportunity to reach out to other student leaders in our school. So although we have bi-weekly meetings with Mr. Trumbull, we wanted more students to have an opportunity to share their thoughts and concerns. Upon realizing this, we worked with Mr. Trumbull, who was very supportive and enthusiastic about our idea on creating a leadership center with the help of Ms. Berman Stellmeyer, Director of Student Activities. This gathering allows student leaders to come together and provide a direct path of communication to students during the activity. We will continue these meetings bi-weekly, and during the final week before break, we had our first meeting to which 16 class officers across the 4 grades and student council officers were invited. In our meeting, we brainstormed ways on connecting and communicating with each other and with the administration as well. So we're also planning on including club officers into our conversations and other student leaders in our future. So we'll update you.
I also saw on the agenda that there's a draft of the 2023-2024 academic calendar. It's really great seeing all these cultural holidays recognized. But I just noticed something minor. Lunar New Year is on the wrong date. Currently, the date is for next year is this year's Lunar New Year date. So it'd be great if the date is changed to February 10th. Another holiday, Passover, is April 22nd to the 30th. This is a holiday, as many of you know, where some Jewish students would be unable to attend school. Would have appreciated if these important holidays lined up with breaks. For further clarification, we are wondering how breaks are determined. And if such, we're wondering how breaks are determined and if such holidays are considered when making. Another topic that has come up is taxes. I think there's a lady who came in during the last meeting today and talked about tax exemptions from Cornell, and just for full transparency, she also talked to us too. This has been something that I have been thinking about a lot, and I thought that this was a good time to bring it up. She brought up good points that one of the largest property holders in our district, Cornell University, is tax exempt, and that its kids are continuously paying increasing amounts of taxes, which are already really high per year. As a student, I personally benefit from our large amount of school taxes, but as someone whose family lives here and pays taxes yearly, I can see that taxes are becoming an increasing burden to community members. I understand that ICSD cannot legally tax Cornell, but I was wondering why we haven't pushed for greater taxes on Cornell, which includes working with legislators to make sure that's. And not including Cornell, is there a focus currently in the school board to alleviate these heavy taxes, such as like asking for reimbursements from the government or like managing our budget? And I would like to mention that I'm not an expert on taxes, so please speak.
Was that it, Grace? Board responses. Jill, Dr. Tripp.
Facilities responses first. I will look into the question about the doors at J building at our next facilities meeting. And maybe have something to report to you after that. You're also welcome to attend our next facilities meeting. So you can explain it further. Ditto for the heating issues in the orchestra room. We'll also be talking a lot about the BKM playground at that meeting, which may be of interest to some of you, and you're welcome to attend. I'm not going to touch the taxes one, but I think Chris is probably eager to jump in there.
Not really. I had one quick question, Claire. What's the criteria or requirements you're using to identify other student leaders within the group that was formed?
So we were, our original. So there, and then I believe there were also a few more people invited that Ms. Dahlmeyer suggested that we invite. So there were around 30 people invited for our first meeting. And then we talked to Mr. Trumbull about inviting club officers. So we can't have 60 people in one room. That would be inefficient. So we were thinking of like having representatives from each group, like student-led group or student club to come to our meetings. And that happens at Universal.
The tax question. So now the Ithaca Times did a great article on Cornell.
It
And
actually wasn't.
the Times.
For free.
Who?
Yes.
Yeah, who spoke with you? And yet Cornell pays a pilot. That they actually don't even pay a pilot. They pay an amount to the school district that they determine. Yes. Payment in lieu of taxes.
Oh, no.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
And there has been a lot of conversation about Cornell paying for it, and we're 100% correct. The property owners of this school district are heavily taxed, and we do not get a lot of state aid. That conversation, and I'm trying to walk around this delicately, really, we don't have a mechanism in place to force Cornell to pay more. They're a non-tax entity because they're a higher education system. And that's where things get tricky. There are certain things coming up by 2025 where we can start having more conversation. But there is not really a mechanism to come out and say you have to pay us this or that.
Can I just add?
Yes.
Just, so, because they are a nonprofit, they're a higher education entity. They, the property that they own, which is a considerable amount of property, is not taxed. And not just Cornell, but countywide, we think it may be as much as 60% of the county property in the county is non-taxable. That's a real problem. So, and Cornell, what they contribute is totally voluntary. And over many, many years, there have been discussions about could they give us more? But as Chris said, we have no mechanism to force them to do it. And I have no idea whether there's any movement to change the law about what property is tax exempt. If there were a movement, I suppose we could, be supportive of that. But where we stand now with Cornell is we have very little power to wield.
Mr. Harris, and then we're gonna let Dr.
Yeah.
Brown.
It's a great question, Grace, and thank you for being brave enough to jump into the fray. This is complicated. And it's a decades long.
Decades.
Century. For a long time. I'm gonna say, Cornell law graduate with the bills, prove it. And enter my 14th year here. I think for a long time, the conversation was wrong. We were wrong-headed. What we should be doing is ask Cornell to help us push Albany to fully fund the aid formula. Right?
Great.
As you guys may know, people around this table, and even the students, you might have family members who work for Cornell. Cornell is an international university. They have a national presence in DC, they have a significant presence here, they have representatives in Albany, this don't get fooled into having them tell you it's a little small cowpoke school. We finally maybe seen some relief that the aid formula, at least this governor has promised to fully fund, which will make a huge difference, not just for us, but the other 7 school districts in the county. That being said, I've been involved in these conversations with Cornell about this for a very long time. Same question you're asking. Cornell's pushback is, how can we possibly tally all of the investments that we make into the public school system for which we don't charge it? And we say, that's fine, you do that anyway. Right, and the reason they do it is because in Columbia, other places where there are Ivy League schools in urban areas, compare the salaries of their faculty members here, and then extra $20,000 to $30,000 tacked on, because in many cases, those faculty members have to pay for private school. Right, so the work we're doing here is keeping the school an excellent avatar of high school academic performance that can get kids into Ivy League schools. It's profound, and that's not something that comes up a lot in conversations around this table. We screwed this up. The whole economic balance of this community changed. Right, so it's a very detailed and a very powerful conversation, and maybe next time we engage with it, we can invite 1 or 2 of you students into the room. In my time in this community, 30 years now, we've never had as savvy as a negotiator and a superintendent as well liked on our hills as this man right here, right? If a college trustee, I know Cornell was trying to get him as well for a time. We're as well positioned as we ever have been to have a high level conversation, but I just want to give you a sense of some of the things on the table. Right? You can't just say, oh, you don't do anything for us, pay more money. Cornell says, ask the state how much their contribution is to sales taxes and the like, and how much they contribute to our school district. We say, that's fine, but all your professors are benefiting from the excellence down the hill. So I hope that gives you some insight into the complexity of this. And
We're not gonna stop trying.
Dr. Wassler and then Dr. Brown.
Very, very brief comment. I've been actually following the latest discussion in the Good Times and people's comments, and I've lived in this town 30 years. And Cornell could hand over a whole pile of money to us and the county and the town, and there's no guarantee that our taxes will go down. People in charge may just decide to spend more because people are always after us to spend more. How many times have you asked us to raise teachers' salaries, hire more aides, make more improvements? I mean, everything you ask for costs money. And you're not the only people who want these schools to be perfect. So Cornell paying a lot more may not change the needle a single bit. And that's part of reality. As someone who just got their second tax assessment raised in 2 years in the middle of the day.
Dr. Brown.
Thank you, Professor. You know, I don't like to speak out of turn, but I feel compelled to share as superintendent and a community member and someone who spent their entire life working and living in a college town. If we're going to have this conversation, I hope we can do it in a special way. One, I was raised when people give you something voluntarily, you say thank you. Now, let's please note that this is a voluntary contribution that Cornell University is making to our school district each year. And each time they do it and we approve it, the acceptance of it, I say thank you. Now, there is another conversation to have, and I hope we can do it in a way that's strategic and lead with information, good information, that isn't shaming anyone. Having lived in Charlottesville, spent a lot of time in Ann Arbor, we can look at what other college towns, what other school districts and college towns receive from the large institution and do a comparison and have an informed conversation about what we could do in partnership with Cornell. Also, I do know that many of our employees have spouses who work there. I know that many of our families, including some folks at this table, have family members who work at Cornell as well. There is an operational budget at Cornell. And so any conversation about them shifting their operational allocations would have an unintended consequence around salary increases and staffing there as well. So much of my thunder has been taken by folks at the table, but my hair and physical growth have been stunted by snow days and tax conversations. And I am determined, as I plan to live in this community the rest of my life, to have a very strategic and thoughtful conversation about things like this. And at the same time, have it be civil, because what I'm hearing mostly the last couple of weeks hasn't been civil, and it has not included a thank you, something someone has done for us voluntarily. So let's start there and then have a data-informed conversation and look at the history. I've gone in this road too many times, in Charlottesville and here, and I don't want that to happen again.
As board president, I just want to add a couple of quick things. Like 60% of the property is non-taxable, and that's just not educational institutions, it's religious organizations, it's not for profit, right? So that's a sizable portion of the population of the property. Ann Arbor is a great example. The state of Michigan has allocated, if I'm not mistaken, a 1 to 1.5% sales tax. That's how they fund their education system. Charlottesville and Virginia has a county-wide system. That's how they fund their education system. New York State has 775 individual school districts, all of which fund it different ways. Neighbors of us receive close to 90% of their school budget via state tax dollars. We receive about 20 to 22%, if I'm not mistaken. I know Amanda will correct me, whatever that may be, right? But a little bit more than 20% of our tax dollars, of our school budget, comes from state tax money, which means that shifts a significant portion of the tax burden onto local tax owners. Simultaneously, we've experienced a significant explosion of development, which means everyone's tax assessment has increased, making our community more and more unaffordable for a number of folks. We are highly aware of that increased tax burden. I've also watched my assessment, like most other folks, continue to rise as I try to remind my family that they can pay our mortgage. I'm not sure they can pay the tax levy, not just from the district, but from the city and from the county. So we're aware of what these balances are. I think to Mr. Harris's point, and what I think the Good Times article was trying to articulate, is that we need to have some different conversations about how we fund public education. It's not just about the way in which we tax folks. More importantly, if we look globally United States spends some of the fewest tax dollars as a percentage of its entire budget on investing in young people. It's not a sustainable practice. So like Dr. Brown, I would like to shift some of these conversations to not talk about an individual entity while I still, as someone who often has the tax or the bills from Cornell, that part, I'm not interested in having that much conversation as I am in how can we do something that's a little bit more revolutionary and sustainable to make sure that we're taking care of folks in our community. So I want to say that real quick. Zara, it was excellent seeing good folks at Black Lives Matter at School Week. So thank you very much for coming to see me talk. That was an absolute joy and delight. I appreciate I'm glad that folks enjoyed the Morocco trip as well. Breaks, I welcome that conversation about what the calendar looks like. Folks should know, we've had this conversation a couple times. Christmas is considered, legally speaking, to be a commercial holiday. So it doesn't get religious designation. Part of the reason why that time is off. We are not supposed to provide breaks based on religious holidays, even though, let's not lie to ourselves, the entire public school system is based off a Protestant Christian model. So there's a reason why holidays tend to line up with particular faiths. How we deconstruct that is not just a local issue about what we can and can't get off. It has impacts around the state, it has impacts on other school districts, it has impact with our local employers about what breaks look like. But this is a conversation that we've been engaged in for some time and trying to find innovative ways. One, it probably would help us to have the correct dates on the calendar, but that's why it says draft. Let's remind ourselves that. But we look forward to trying to be as innovative and supportive as possible, knowing that we all come from different religious backgrounds and need the support to make sure that we can practice our faiths and not be punished while at school. And I you had your hand up during the tax thing, so I wanted to make sure you had a chance to respond.
Oh, I just had a question about why ICSD doesn't get that much state aid. Like, is there a particular reason for that?
The accessible, the amount of assessed property is significant compared to other communities. And so in some regards, we are considered to be, I wouldn't say an affluent district, but some folks may, because there are other districts that get 98% of their budget from property tax. So it depends on where you are, what the state aid formula is. So it's all depending upon how much the assessed value of the property tax is. The only cost. Great question.
One problem with that formula.
Many problems with that.
Yeah, significant. As you all may know, we did have a legislative action committee here for years, and that committee, which I served on for a long time with some of my colleagues here, we took regular trips all to have these conversations. And to see our local assembly person and our local state senator, when he was in Elmira, now we have a newly elected person in Binghamton, and we'll continue these conversations. But
they met with 2 weeks ago, they met with Senator Webb not so long ago.
We've got about, well, we can talk about why later, but in those conversations, one thing we tried to stress is, as Sean said, the aid formula looks at us as if we're somewhat wealthy. Does not take into consideration the number of individual schools we have that have an extraordinarily high percentage of free and reduced lunch students, right? And we know this, we don't have to prove it, because the state has said that at least 3, I think, schools, or maybe 2 elementary schools, have such a high number that no one there has to pay for free, no one has to pay for lunch. So it's not free and reduced, it's free. They are trying to tweak the formula, but another way to get at the question is it doesn't serve communities like ours well. We're not quite there yet, but we're leaning toward the tale of two cities. And if we have that number of kiddos at elementary school whose families may be struggling economically, you all know far better than I how that permeates, how that affects your learning at high school. So lots of shades to this, but that's one that I wish the formula did better in that.
I would presume that, I presume that the finance committee is going to be focused on putting together a budget. We're making it, we're getting there. I presume that the finance committee will be looking at putting together a budget, and then afterwards we'll be able to have a conversation about this topic and additional topics as we've discussed prior, but let's get through the budget season first.
And we are in the budget season in September and October. We did a presentation on formulation of a budget, what goes into it, expenditures and revenue side. And we will, I'll get with, well, Amanda and I'll get together and talk about doing a synopsis, but there is a one pager that we'll get out to you folks.
Fantastic. We gotta keep it moving, Grace. Yes. Quick.
Thank you for.
Yes, we can talk about it at a finance meeting when we're doing it next week. Fantastic. Appreciate it. That will move our agenda. Great questions. Up next is the consent agenda.
I'll move the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved by Chris, seconded by Pat. Questions, conversations, discussions?
Okay. I'll speak briefly to the consideration of accounts. If there is a lot there, if you look at 8.3 through 8.7, all IPEI funds that are being moved at this time. 8.1 is a special aid park foundation for student lead the way. And then happily put in there, we also have facing history, LACS Washington DC trip. I thought you'd like that one. Moving right along, there is also, and I was going to speak to this, the resolution for the disposal and designation of surplus property. The school district has to do this, and we put the surplus property either for auction or donation when they do the inventory and it comes up for and identified as surplus property. So there's also other options we can do with that, but it has to be identified first.
Like big machines get,
Sorry.
like big machines get auctioned.
Yes, so this one is books and also vehicles. There's a truck and athletic equipment. And then we also have the correction plan for the 2 middle schools, high school and LCS, that was reviewed by our audit committee, and how we handle monies. Part of our audit process goes in and sees different opportunities that we have, and this was the corrective action portion of that we vote on and approve today, that we put in place. And we've got the treasurer's statement and also the approval for cooperative purchasing of cafeteria supplies, including milk, ice cream, and bread. I know I missed 1 or 2 on that list, but that is a brief synopsis.
Great, thank you, Mr. Malcolm. Additional board questions, comments?
I have one, in light of our superintendent reminding us to be grateful. We'd be remiss not to thank the Park Foundation for their generous contribution. $42,000 to a pilot program, which is going to allow older students to provide academic support to their peers, in particular their peers who might have IEPs. A lot of us talked around this table about how we remember such programs when we were in high school or middle school, where people promoted and allowed us to help our peers who may not be as academically successful. So thank you to Park, and I'm assuming that it was Barry on our side might have had something to do with this grant, like you always do. Anything you'd like to add?
I like that. Yeah.
Fantastic.
That's totally.
So, high school.
Discussed that said, who's considered a teacher? And those conversations highlighted their desire to do this work and also explore the teaching profession. So this grant is to Teachers College with their application for students who wish to be a teacher to enhance Dr. Brown's career.
Excellent, fantastic. Is that 1 year? What's a
1 year?
1 year? Thank you.
couldn't let this pass without pointing that out. Thank you.
No other,
I have one other question with item 6.2. Can we get a little clarity on the process of the nomination for both these and what the board's role is for that and how we do it, basically?
I'm confused by the question, Aaron.
So we talked about this, but I'm still, what? We nominate this person, but the role of the candidate that goes to BOCES is, what do they do and what is our role in the nomination? Why are we doing that for BOCES as our representative? And what exactly is their role there? What does that position do?
So the person we nominate serves on the BOCES Board of Education. They do the exact same thing that we're doing here for BOCES. The nomination process happens in different ways. In this regard, this is the person who's been filling in this position for the past 3+ years, if I'm not mistaken, more than 3 years, and was endorsed by Dr. Madison of TST BOCES to continue in that role. So that's where it would stand.
And so BOCES, it's essentially their board of election, but they don't. But they don't actually have the public vote on it.
They would be listed as
Yeah.
part of their public vote. Each component district sends forward a nomination. It gets entered into the BOCES public vote along with their agenda, along with their budget as well.
So the BOCES public vote is the component school districts vote on the boards of the component school districts vote on the BOCES budget and the BOCES Board of Education.
This is a very different process than
Yes,
a
very
public school. So in the future, when we have more time, I would really like as a board to discuss what this is and how ICSD plays a role in who we nominate to BOCES and better understanding the relationship of ICSD and BOCES, because it's such a valuable kinship. I don't feel like we as a board discuss BOCES enough, honestly. I don't understand BOCES well enough to be able to, I just don't, I would like to understand it better.
I think we need to separate two different things from nominating the BOCES board. And a number of board members are very well informed about what BOCES does and work closely with them, including people who have taken visits up there recently within the past 2 months. But yes, we will have part of that conversation when BOCES comes next month. I want to say the next finance meeting, and then we'll be here at a board meeting to present their budget as well. Let us know what services they provide, what innovations are coming up in the future year at an annual presentation that happens before. But yeah, we can entertain that.
I'm gonna bring up a good point. We have talked in the past about having the board rep, our board rep come speak at board meetings on a regular basis. And we talked about it, we did that in doing Mr. Grant or whoever the rep would love to be a part of that.
And I know Jeff Madison has also offered to on tours and on-site visits, to show what they're doing and what's going on up there. I think coming out of COVID, things are just getting back up to speed as far as those interactions.
At least 3 of us, if I remember correctly, have served as representatives from this board through the collection of board members in other school districts who meet on a monthly basis. So,
And that's called the executive board for reasons I don't really understand, but it's distinct from the BOCES Board of Education. So Eldred, Pat, and I have all spent, more than 1 year monthly meeting with, and the meeting is run by Jeff Madison, who is the superintendent of BOCES, and we find out what's happening in the component district, and we find out what's happening at BOCES.
Excellent. And just to make clear, because my brain doesn't work very well sometimes, when I speak about myself, I kind of mean, like, we don't talk about it at public meetings. So I do know that board members go and many people are very knowledgeable. But when we have our public meetings, I don't think we explain. We don't talk about it often. It's like once a year someone comes. So I would like to maybe have this.
I like the idea. Let's make it reciprocal, because we have, the component districts have representatives from each district come and speak to the whole and recently married woman. Came and was gracious enough to talk about the entire Learning Forward agenda, so that was fantastic. We know they also have experts who go in the rooms and talk about how their budget is created and about what they do, so even better than the three of us sitting here trying to explain to you what you're doing, and Dr. Brown. Maybe we get them to come down and present us.
Additional questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the consent agenda? All opposed? All abstaining? You got it, Christian. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 11, Dr. Brown.
I'll be very brief, and I'll ask folks to look at the latest E-Insider. It was released yesterday, and my superintendent's report is in there. So, it's good enough. Thank you.
Very brief.
Yeah.
Moving on to school business, we have item 11.1, which is a budget premium of assumptions and forecasts.
We can make this very brief too.
It's hard to do 150 million plus in really brief, but I'm going to do it. So this is preliminary, so I actually don't have a lot of the full assumptions yet in terms of the expenditures. Thank you, Dr. Brown. And we did cover this also in finance committee. So notice the date, this was the board meeting that was canceled. So this would have been the presentation that we went over. And I think it's really important to make sure that we start here. And so there we go. Again, we are driven by a calendar, right? We know that at finance committee, that's where all really the deep conversations are happening. And we invite our budget developers to come to that meeting as well. Trisha, you might just need to click it on these things. Thanks. What is a school budget, right? A lot of people assume that this is the expenditures. We try to do our best to capture what the expenditures will be many months from now, right? Starting in July 1. So it really is a statement of the needs and priorities and values. That's what public comment is about. That is what, you know, when we meet with our community members, it's a representation of things that we've always been doing, things that we're currently doing, and things that we want to be, right? And so we want to make sure that that represents that, also an estimation of the funding that we think we're going to need to do all of those things. And so there's a give and take in this process. There are things that are added, there are things that are removed. There's the logistics that we must follow. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. We know that there are priorities that drive our expenses, right? And there are any one of these things, we can't put a value on that, but you have to make a budget for it, right? And so we know that these are really the sort of the pillars that we have been kind of utilizing. And I know at Finance Committee, we also talked about perhaps in this area here, healthy and safe community buildings or our buildings, not just as community centers, but also sustainable measures, right? Green thinking. And so that was a comment that we wanted to put in there, especially with the work that we're doing to help our environment, not just in our classrooms, but also outside of our classrooms. So I wanted to start with just some of the estimations for expenditures. So, you know, we talked about taxes a lot, and we talked about that's mainly where our revenue comes from. I'm going to get to the revenue side in a second. Revenue is the money that comes into the district. Expenditures is the money that goes out, right, to keep our operations going. And they include really important things like our people, right? That is the biggest cost driver of our budget. It is the largest component of our budget. We have contractual obligations. We actually go through negotiations, meet with teachers and paraprofessionals and employees association and substitutes, and we have administrators, and each one of those, we have obligations to them in writing that is binding. And so next year, just to turn the calendar from this year to next year, we know we're probably going to need an additional $6 million to cover our obligations in salaries, just salaries alone, right? And so we know that when this clock turns for us, we have to be able to have revenue to cover these contractual obligations. We know the retirement benefits, really they go up every year because they're often sort of hanging off of the salary components. Health insurance costs go up every year. We're working on those numbers right now, so I'm not going to sort of give you an estimate at this point in time, but we'll be meeting in March to get that a little bit closer. BOCES is having an increase. Eldred warned us about this. They sort of said that the admin budget, they held it a little bit knowing that COVID was happening. They had some financing changes. And so we know that with the BOCES budget just going from one year to the next, it's about 1.3 million that we're going to need to cover that change in cost from one year to the next. Debt service, all the work that we have been doing, not the current work, because we actually pay debt service on things that have happened in prior years from our prior capital projects and the ones that we've completed. Debt service is going to go up about $1 million. Right, so you start to see these are millions, right? And so professional development, all these other things that are here, we know that they are going to be costing our general fund more money. Specifically, inclusion practices and social and emotional well-being. We used a lot of the COVID funds, right? So those funds that we got that were ARP, ESSER, GEAR, we actually coded a lot of things to those federal funds. They have to be brought back into the general fund because we found that when we enhance those things, they actually are things that we want to continue to do. Remember about our value system, right? And the things that we believe that we want to hold dear. These are things that we want to continue. So they have to come back into the general fund and we have to find that money to support those. So those are just some of the things right now. Next time I see you, I'll have slides with different topics and then we'll talk about more specific numbers. Trisha, the final slide. I'm sorry, second to last slide. Property taxes, right? So this is right now what we know is within the property tax cap. The property tax cap is a mechanism by New York State that actually is imposed on taxable entities that say you have to put numbers into this formula. You pop out a number. If you stay within that, essentially you are being good stewards to your taxpayers because you are being capped at a certain amount of money that you can actually levy of your community, right? That doesn't mean that it still feels good to taxpayers. That's why we watch the rate. We watch how much our assessed value is. We try to talk about what would be, best for our community to support in our budget. We try to be really transparent about what our expenditures are because the tax levy should represent your community's belief that this school district is worth funding. Right? You want to make sure that your priorities align with the taxpayer priorities, and you're really showing that we're using the community's dollars in a manner that really supports all of our young people. I don't think good jobs to a lot of our people. Okay, so this is a really healthy increase for us. I think that that's a really a good place to start. Remember that this levy then, as Dr. Bradwell is saying, is spread across all of the assessed properties, right? So the more that is built here in this community, the more that we have happening in our community, the more shoulders there are to carry the burden of this tax levy, and that's where we get then our rates for our individuals. State aid, it's interesting that we're talking about state aid. Remember that state aid is just another way of saying my tax dollars in a different way. It's the tax dollars that I pay to the state that then gets dispersed by formula to communities across the state per a wealth value, per a population value, per an attendance rate, per there's many things in the formula. But please don't ever think that this is not taxes. This is taxes too, right? And so every community member is paying this as well. And then it gets dispersed across the state. And so the biggest driver in state aid for Ithaca City School District is that foundation aid. That's what everybody was talking about. That's that formulaic aid. And so we have had an increase this year. And this, I think, takes us to, I want to say this is what we received in 2007. I can get you that number again. So yes, Eldred, you are correct, right? This was undervalued for many years. This was always threatened to schools. We all lived through the gap elimination adjustment, and to catch up to what school districts are owed, it's tens of millions of dollars, right? But this year, what a great performance for Ithaca City School District in terms of foundation aid. Okay, all the other aids really here are based on our behaviors, right? So building aid, BOCES aid, transportation aid, those are reimbursement aids. You have to spend money to get it back. And so for every dollar we spend, we get about 50 cents back in aid. And that's just an estimate because they fluctuate around that opportunity. So we are spending essentially, in the past 3 years, $10 million to get back 5. Okay, so this is all revenue, and it helps alleviate the cost of our expenditures that I showed you. And it gets us halfway there, right? So this is sort of the picture right now, the forecast picture for revenue. We also have lots of other revenues, one of which is the Cornell opportunity that they do give us every year. And that is currently in the amount of $500,000. We get Medicaid reimbursements, we get rebates from BOCES of things that we didn't spend. And so that will also go into this revenue picture. And so remember that we have to have a balanced budget. So we always want to be able to show that any increase in revenue matches those increases to those expenditures that I just talked about. And if there is a gap, we use our savings accounts, which is our fund balance and or reserves to be able to pay for that gap, because you must have a balanced budget. You must have your expenditures meeting your revenues. Okay, so next steps, Tricia, this is just the last slide here. We are going to continue to analyze. We're Lily and I, Mary, Ladira, Sydney, there's a bunch of us meeting with every single budget developer for 3 to 5 days straight, back-to-back meetings, going through literal, like absolutely every little piece, making sure that we have everything rolled forward. We connect with stakeholders. We'll do more presentations at finance. We're going to be using our communication team. We're going to be doing hopefully little videos or little snippets, little tweets out. I know that we have so many wonderful collaborators just here on the board around that communication effort and improving that. So we're going to try to do that better. And then, of course, we have our mechanisms to bring you through Dr. Brown's recommended budget to you, the board, which you would then approve in mid-April. And then that would be the budget that we would educate and engage the community about. And that would be on the May ballot. So, Erin.
Sorry.
No, I'm so glad you asked.
No, I will make it very quick because I feel like I'm here. But can you go to the previous slide? Is it like when Pat mentioned earlier how our tax assessments are going up, and talking about like how much our taxes hurt us. But when we're talking about that and assessments going up, that's why there's a jump in proposed revenue, is that not?
No, so the tax assessments actually are not part of the tax cap calculation. It is your prior year, right? And then you actually look at what you spend in debt service, right? Which is this area here, this building aid, that particular line of like $11 million. You actually are allowed to use that as an exclusion. It's called a capital exclusion. It gets backed out, right? And then there are a couple of factors that are multipliers in that formula. The 2%, right? There's a 2%, so this naturally gets increased by 2%. And then there is a tax-based growth factor that is relative to the assessed value increases year to year, but it actually is it's a percentage value. It's sort of it's a multiplier that you're allowed to increase it by, right? So ours is, I think it was like 1.063 this year. I can don't quote me on that. But it's in the formula, right? And that's what increases it from one year to the next. But that's really the only way that assessment is a tool to drive you to that tax-based growth factor, but it is not part of this formula at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we have a video and also a little one-pager on the website, the budget website, around the tax cap and how do you calculate.
I mean, I know I should know it by now.
You should not know.
No.
Well, there's a reason why some of us are on finance, others are on policy. So this is information that we'll be following up with at the next policy or next finance committee meeting now and then each board meeting will be doing some more synopsis and summaries of where we're at. Yeah. Thank you very much, man. I don't know who's presenting on the draft of the calendar. Is that something that we want to just propose and tell folks to look at, or how do we want to do this, Ms. Tull? We can make it for that race.
For those who don't know me, who are watching at home or watching this later, I'm the deputy superintendent. And I have the great good fortune of have worked with students, union leaders, and other folks in the community in order to develop our draft academic calendar each year. And over the course of, I would say, the last 4 or 5 years, we have worked really closely with students from LACS and South Hill who have indicated that we need to have a much more inclusive calendar, which is why you now see
unfortunately erroneous dates of importance that we will certainly correct. But you also see that there are some days where we don't have school that we had traditionally had school in the past. So we have carried that forward to this year, so the coming year as a proposal. We also have contractual obligations that we have to fulfill for our bargained, our collective bargaining agreements. And we have state requirements that we have to meet in terms of minimum hours and minimum days of instruction, and they vary based on the level for students. And then we also have our region, the Tompkins Seneca Tioga BOCES or TST BOCES serves 9 school districts. And they have a regional calendar that they put forward every year. And we then use that information to help guide our development as well. And the reason we do this is because there are a number of services that directly impact young people that we know we want to coordinate. So we have some young people who spend part of their day with us at LECS or IHS, and they spend part of their day at BOCES. And if we don't have the same alignment for all of our calendar days, that means that kids either never get a break or they're missing a chunk of their schooling. So that's a tension that we've lived with for a long time. We've had families who are really hoping that we can align with the Cornell break. And or Ithaca College, right? And that can be challenging, knowing that we're trying to be as inclusive as possible and recognize what, the various needs of our young people. So this year, this calendar for next year looks kind of interesting. It's a little different. The very last day for kindergarten or pre-K through 8th grade students is also the last day for staff, so it would be a half day. And this was to meet minutes requirements, days requirements, and contractual obligations, and to address all of those other elements I was just talking about.
So Ms. Tuckett, the process from here, right? This is a draft calendar. The goal of the board is to take it in, to review it, hear from the community as well, to give feedback, to correct some dates, and then what happens next from here?
So typically we have a period of public comment. So the way, it's on the website, and we take folks' feedback and we actually put that out to the community as well, so they can see, redacted with names, people can see what all of the comments are. And we have further discussions at board meetings. That comment period usually lasts around 2 to 3 weeks. And then we have further discussion. The board makes further recommendations. Could you please change this? Could you please include this, etc. And then we bring it forward again.
So for the community, a recommendation to check the district website to see the draft calendar, to use the Let's Talk portal, contact board members, contact board clerk, contact Dr. Brown or Ms. Talcott to provide feedback. And this will be back in front of the board probably in a month, I would say, with all the comments and feedback. Dr. Watson.
I would like to just forward a few community comments I heard with last year's calendar relative to planning this year's calendar. One of them, of course, is spring break. Why can't it be Cornell's week? Although that's not inclusive of neighbors who both happen to work at Cornell. But one of the things they brought up, and I do too, so, but I was that with sports and the spring break, families, first world problems I know have, well, we can't get away that week. But I never was able to get away that week. So, but one of the things they brought up, they said, why does our spring break have to be this week? And I explained BOCES calendar, 7, 8 other school districts that have to align. And if you didn't do that, then you would be subjecting several hundred young people who do part of the day at BOCES to do double time, and they accepted that, but then they told me, so this is all news to me because you know I am the least literate sports person on this board by far. That because Ithaca is such a larger district, their teams aren't playing the other teams within our BOCES districts. They're playing like Binghamton, Elmira, Corning. All of those other BOCES coordinate on the week of spring break, and TST BOCES doesn't coordinate with them. And I just thought that maybe that would be an issue to bring up with TST BOCES, because their coach made them say, you can't go anywhere, you have to commit to all these games. And then there were no games because all the other schools were gone in a different week. Well, anyway.
Yeah, maybe, because I do know that the boys basketball team did play last week, it was during break, so.
Well, that winter break, I think it's supposed to spring break, and maybe they do align now. And just the other thing that I heard from parents of very little children with last year's calendar, which looks to be largely corrected here, is that last year with the staff development days and different days off, and that there was over a month right at the beginning of school where there was a day off every week, and it was a different day. And starting school, a lot of them were really thrown off by that, and it was hard for them to settle into a routine. So I'm glad to see that that's better, and that's just my feedback.
I think that feedback is fantastic, and I know there'll be other feedback. I hope Dr. Brown doesn't mind me sharing something I've heard him say. If you can find me the perfect school calendar, please tell me. Right, that we're not going to be able to appease everybody, and doesn't mean that we can't continue to try to improve and address the concerns that Dr. Wasel and other folks have raised. But it's an imperfect system to try to find a perfect calendar. Karen, yes.
I feel like we talked about this before, but because the new one on here, because since we have to consider and think about these things, the half day for middle schoolers. Are we exploring putting something into place for those students who need a caregiver? Yeah. So we have a plan for that, so they're not.
I mean, it's not solid, it's next year, Erin. Yeah, feedback totally taken, that was okay.
Perfect.
Any other comments from board members, questions? So we look forward to the continued conversation, and if please forward all that feedback that you get from other folks as well, who are exec team. I think it'll be important for them to hear that as well.
Please also always use the Let's Talk portal, which is designated on our website.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Tucker. Next on our agenda is a retiree healthcare resolution. It's unfortunate that our Vice President Maura Lang had to leave early this evening, given Maura has been intimately involved over the past 3+ years in a number of conversations. And we have a resolution here that we hope puts us in a direction to begin to demonstrate that we are hearing what our retirees are saying and puts us down a path. We know that there will still be questions. We know that this is the start of a conversation. There's additional work that will still be done, but this is the resolution that we have before us now. So with that quick caveat, we'll entertain motions, and then we'll get to discussion if there is any.
A motion to authorize the superintendent of schools to offer retired employees a one-time opportunity to revert to the medical supplemental health plan. Medicare, sorry, thank you.
Second.
Moved by Chris, seconded by Pat. Conversation, discussion, questions, Dr. Tripp.
Got a couple of, I think, friendly amendments here. The first thing is to offer retired employees a one-time opportunity to revert to the Hartford Medicare supplemental. I believe that's the only, where's Bob? Is Bob here?
It is, and that is actually in the wording of the resolution itself, while it's not in the motion.
All right, well, let's move through the whereases then.
Okay,
Whereas the Ithaca City School District, the district is contractually obligated to provide health insurance coverage to certain retired employees of the district. I would like us to have something in there that would say to provide health insurance commensurate with that provided current employees, or make some. I mean, that is the whole point of this. It's not that we have to provide some insurance. It's that we are contractually obligated to provide equivalent to insurance, or I don't know what the words are.
so.
But it seems to me that that's, since that is the crux of the matter, that's missing there.
So two things. One, we have to add, Chris, that that's a friendly amendment.
Okay,
And so let me start there. Is that a friendly amendment?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. And also, and I think Bob needs to speak on this, is the word certain binding us or exclusionary?
Certain is referencing that only certain employees are eligible for temporary health insurance.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
It's referencing only certain employees are eligible for health insurance. There's one bargaining unit in particular that doesn't have health insurance as a benefit, and other retirees might not qualify for retiree health insurance. Additionally, what Dr. Tripp is referencing is required by law. So even if it wasn't specifically stated in here, it would be required anyways.
so that would be true of all the different bargaining units that might have this.
Yeah, so
As well as, I only know about the ITA, obviously.
Districts cannot change retiree health insurance, cannot diminish the benefits of retiree health insurance unless there is a commensurate diminishment in active employees, which would have to be bargained for by the various unions.
But indeed, that did happen.
No, we're the district, in this particular case, the district is not saying, in fact, you have said the opposite, that the current plan that's being offered is actually more than the Hartford plan. But there are certain retirees who have expressed they preferred the Hartford plan over what they currently have under the Aetna plan. So we are offering those retirees the option to go back to the Hartford plan, even though the Hartford plan has been designated as a lesser plan than what we currently have. Now, it might be marginally less, and there might be things that are less that are unimportant to a number of the retirees. But the district in no way is saying that the Aetna plan, which we currently have, is less than either Hartford or what the retirees have or have.
Right. But on the one hand, you're saying the state wouldn't allow the district to go to a lesser plan. On the other hand, you're saying that the district has determined that Hartford was a lesser plan at one point.
No, the Hartford plan is the one that we left to go to Aetna. And Aetna offered certain additional benefits to entice the district to move to it.
Right.
So retirees actually have additional benefits under the Aetna plan, which we currently have. Should those retirees want to switch back to Hartford, the waiver and release will indicate that it is a plan that is inferior. Now, again, it might be marginally inferior to the.
And it may be a judgment call.
It certainly might.
I mean,
right there.
Who decides what's inferior and.
Yeah, so I think it's
Depending upon the individual.
Right.
The individual might say, I appreciate the benefits under Aetna, the additional benefits, but they're unimportant to me. I'd rather have the supplemental plan under Hartford, because procedurally, I like that plan better. And that's what we're offering to them.
Okay, let's move on then to.
Jill, I just want to make sure, this is me speaking.
Yeah.
Any changes to this resolution to me would not allow me to vote on this evening.
I understand
I would
that.
ask that we run it through legal, so I just want to make sure we're on the same page. That
I just want to have,
the language.
yeah, I want to have a quick discussion about something to me that seems to be lacking, and that's some sort of timeline. At one point it says timely. I'm concerned about that. I'm presuming our intention is to have this offered and settled and all the copies initialed before next year's
Well,
Medicare change
I can
deadline.
speak to that, right? So the idea of timing is not to stall, but it's actually to make sure that we give retirees the time to consider what they want to do.
Right.
So the thought about using that phrase, which was to assist retirees. If we want to go ahead and put a date on it, then that part we can do. But the goal was to actually be more flexible to make sure we can do the proper outreach. Some folks we know are going to get emails, some folks we know are going to get paper. So we're trying to figure out what was the best way. And that was the reason why we used the timely. That's the discussion I've been a part of, Bob. Is that fair?
That's fair.
So again, if you want to change it, by all means, but the idea was to say, not again, we want to make sure this happens, but we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to do the research to make this happen. So you should.
Could we say rather than timely that in order for such retirees who choose to switch, we will do so before next year? I don't know. Where is the timely?
Well, and I think it's number 2.
Under whereas is or?
No, therefore be it resolved.
Oh,
It's
okay.
number 2. But my understanding is that this opportunity is going to happen much sooner than next year.
Yeah, it would start immediately.
It would start immediately.
That's an understanding versus it's not in here. I would like to see something in here saying, when is this gonna happen?
Isn't there a line to the opposite point, past point? Obviously, a line in the sand by which they have to make this move.
Yeah,
We an ultimate date. that
We
set
have
timeline.
a fixed price point with Hartford to come in at right now. The reason we wrote it this way is even back when we were switching to Hartford the first time, there always seemed to be a rush. And retirees always seem to be rushed that like you have to make this decision in the next week or 2 because we have a price point that we've locked into. What this allows us to do is not be held hostage to a price point. It is possible, we're gonna initiate this tomorrow if it's voted on by the board. We'll initiate the letters and communication out to retirees. But if for some reason we aren't able to move swiftly enough, we will get a new price point from Hartford. We would not have to come back to the board for further authorization. We would just simply have the authorization and we move retirees to the next price point. This is so that retirees don't feel rushed, and it might take, some of them want to have in-person meetings, so it could take, we're thinking 4 to 6 weeks just to get people in a place where they're understanding their rights and obligations.
And how long is our, with Hartford, how long is our tentative agreement?
I checked it again with Christine from EMB today, and it's like if the board acts on this today, she would like to have at least the first few people signed up and ready to go by April 1st, and that will contractually lock in that.
I see. Okay.
So we feel that we can do that because there were at least a few retirees who were pretty adamant, like, I want to go back to Harvard right now. So we're hoping that it's like, okay, you can do it. And by April 1st, we'll be back on Hartford. That'll lock in the price point. And then we can, others who are not quite as sure and want more time to compare and have communications with people, we'll have that time.
So within the next few weeks, you plan to have information out there so retirees can look at how much more it would cost them. It will cost more.
We'll be pushing.
To go to Hartford.
We'll be pushing all the information out relatively quick, and hopefully have at least the first few signed up by April, and then more broadly, May. Which is a much longer time frame for allowing people to switch than we've had in the past, and it's a result of this resolution.
My other quick question about this is that there are retirees currently who are not yet Medicare age. And I know at least some of them are very concerned. And I'm presuming the plan at this point is to have them be on Aetna. Is that accurate?
As we sit here, yes, that's the plan, but as this resolution directs, we will continue to have conversations with retiree groups and individual retirees if if they want.
So this one time isn't intended to say we would never offer this again.
That's
It's
correct.
saying for
And it
these
would be-
retirees who are now eligible for it
Yeah,
to switch.
for the current retirees, we need to offer one time because actuarials will start to coalesce
Mhm.
around who's in which plans, and they need that to do their budgeting. But in the future, whatever iteration of the board, it is in the control of future boards
Right.
to allow additional people to switch.
I'm just wondering how large a group that is of current retirees who are not yet Medicare aged. Do you happen to know that, Amanda? No, okay. All right. I'm ready to vote at this point.
Well,
That answers my questions, my proposals.
So, and thank you for those questions. What I do know is that we've been trying to learn from the two previous to write language that doesn't do the opposite of what we're trying to do.
Right, I appreciate
Just to
that.
demonstrate that we're hearing people and we're trying to provide some flexibility. So I think the questions are essential.
Dr. Bradwell, one more point to that. Our legal counsel has stressed. If you remember, the first time we switched from to Hartford, there was a 15-page waiver and release, and people had to initial on each page. We're down to a page and a half, hopefully a one-pager. So
Good.
Yeah.
That will seem less onerous to people, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
So that's not what I've been sharing, so that's helpful. It's saying be prepared for another 30 initials, but that's fantastic. to
Yeah,
hear.
no, that was one of the points that we can probably get it down to one page and have the same legal effect.
And let me say that we can, even if we pass this resolution, does not mean the end of the conversation.
Right.
Right, it does not mean the end of what we investigate and what we talk about. We're still gathering data, right? We're still doing the surveying, having information. So for me, this is an ongoing process, not a one and done.
Thank you.
And the reason why we don't have a specific date or time frame here is because of the legal contract that will go to the retiree, where they would have the specifics.
Right, right, if we had a date certain in here, it would not leave us any room if we missed the date. We have to come back to the board and get another resolution, and then be racing against another time frame from the health insurance offer. So this just gives some more flexibility. But I think it was Dr. Bradwell who said, this is not in any way like so we can drag our feet. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You direct in here, all due deliberate speed. So it's like, we're moving along. Yeah.
I wanted to note that I challenged that language given our history in the United States. I understand the intent behind it. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? It's unanimous with the board members who are present. Thank you very much. Thank you to Bob and the team for the work on this. It's been tireless. Thank you, Maura, here for your work as well. Item 12.4 is the property tax exemption threshold. This is what we had the public hearing for earlier. We'll entertain motions and then conversation.
I move to amend the relation to the commercial tax exemption for first 65 years of age or more as part of the consent agenda.
Second.
It wasn't part of it.
At one point in time it was. So
So I'll stop it for persons 65 years of age or more.
thank you. Moved by Pat, seconded by Chris. Question, discussion, conversation? Yeah, Dr. Kerr.
Is the language coming from the state or someone else? I can't help but notice husband and wife as opposed to couple or some less gendered statement. So is this in the first resolve or the second resolve here? It says real property within the district boundaries owned by one or more persons, each of whom is 65 or over, or real property within the district boundaries owned by husband and wife. And then it refers to husband and wife again. I would be happier to see either married couple or some other less gendered
I
phrase.
can't see why they couldn't. So spouses or
Spouses, legal spouses, whatever. So that doesn't come directly from the state or anything.
So this is our attorney drafted this for us.
Okay.
So I think that that's a great change that we can do.
So can we entertain a exact language so we can see if it's a friendly amendment or not? Karen, you speaking to this topic?
Yeah, knowing New York State at times, and this is referenced in sections 466.7 and 459 of the tax law. It may very well state husband and wife in there. So if we're going to make any changes, we have to make sure before we.
Could we parenthetically, after husband and wife say, quote, legal spouses or married couple? We're not getting rid of husband and wife, we're just making clear that that includes others.
Bob nodding yes.
Yes.
As I understand it, this is a timely vote that had. to be-
Right, but it would be nice if we could
Yeah,
not exclude.
I wonder if we could amend, if we could take it to policy, check with legal as to whether we could amend it and then bring it back.
I would propose a different approach. I would propose that if it's a friendly amendment, to change the language and then do the legal fight afterwards. Right, so whatever that may look like. But I propose that we change the language, see if we are in agreement, and then bring it to our legal counsel afterwards. I think that would be a better approach.
Are we in danger of the board passing a resolution that will be deemed illegal and then impacting the tax breaks?
That's my concern. That's my concern, if we can't get rid of it tonight, and I agree with Jill completely.
Sorry, say that again?
I have language for you. It says, ownership requirements was owned by a spouse, one of whom was 65 years of age or older. Or is owned by a married couple.
There we go.
So I just I'm just taking it from the tax website.
That's the way. So we can say where it says husband and wife, we can supplant that with owned by a married couple.
Owned by a married couple. I've had it twice.
Owned by a married couple instead of husband and wife.
Well, I'm still trying to think, yeah.
That's my proposal for the friendly amendment, yeah.
Well, in volume 5, taxation and finance, it does have reference husband and wife, each 65 years of age or over. I just don't want us to change something in this that if we got it from the tax law, New York State taxation and finance.
If we did it in parentheses, would that suffice to,
If New York State recognizes same sex marriage.
Yeah.
To the extent that we can't make it wrong to use outdated language, it would not. Be upheld. You know, this language says husband and wife certainly applies to same sex married couples in New York. Period. So you can say married couples and there's no challenge.
Okay.
One here, yeah.
Further conversation, discussion, it says it twice in the be it resolved.
Yep.
Any other further conversation, concerns? Pat, is it a friendly amendment?
I'm smiling.
I think it's a friendly amendment, especially in this town.
I think you all know, I do not like Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm still trying to follow them.
So we need to vote on the amendment first, you're right?
Well, no, being friendly.
No, okay.
It's being friendly, we'll keep it moving. It's not being friendly that we vote.
It can hold my feet to the fire.
One more time, just to make sure.
Replace
Husband and wife.
with married couple.
Okay, I got you. I see what you're saying, right? Okay. In two places, are all board members on the same page where we're at?
No.
So in the paragraph it says be.
I know where you're referencing, I'm not on the same page and agreeing with that, because takes into consideration everyone, husband and wife, or two individuals, one or more persons. And I want to be cautious in changing anything if it's referenced in a specific tax law. And it's already in the tax law and references husband and wife. It doesn't have parentheses, it doesn't have anything of that sort. We have here husband and wife, each of whom has a qualified disability, and prior to that, it says owned by one or more persons. Do we have to specify that extra and put in married couple to change it?
Owned by one.
Or can it be
Yeah.
amended after approved, once we have?
That's what I suggested.
Right.
I think
That
that
we
is
just approve it and then we discuss it as is, because it does say owned by one or more persons, each of whom is 65 years of age or over.
Then we could just get rid of the.
No, because.
No.
No, with the husband and wife, only one of them has to be 65 or over, and the one or more persons, but we need to pass this tonight, and Karen's doing some great sleuthing over there on making our resolutions match New York State law, which we do that. There are many occasions when we have looked at different resolutions that no, this is what New York State law follows. So, but if we have, because those are different qualifications.
Can we table this?
No.
We've already finished my sentence.
No.
Can we table this? Have someone contact our attorney while we finish the rest of the policies and get confirmation from whoever wrote this. Table it for like 10 minutes. Is our attorney not on call? Can we not confer with them and do this correctly right now?
I'm reading it. Kate is smarter than I am. Let's start with that. And Aaron, I'm reading this. And husband and wife, in this context, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, it's really just referencing property that is jointly owned. Right, property that can be owned by both of them together. As opposed to the other one, which can indicate someone's owned property individually.
This law,
It could be whoever.
this law says husband and wife, it legally applies to married same-sex individuals. Period. So you can either keep the language and understand that the state has to catch up.
Yeah.
You could just reference the tax laws by section number and now and just say as provided in section whatever, and to delete the rest of it, because it's just superfluous anyway. Or you can say married couples, because that's legally what husband and wife mean now. In that law, it means married couples, because the New York State recognizes legal. And there's no way if the state bureaucrat said it doesn't apply to. So.
Right.
Can I make a motion that we call our attorney to confirm this? Now, so we can approve this tonight.
I go stressing my brow. Table, vote to the table.
Okay.
There's no.
There is a motion on the table.
I move that we table this for the time being this evening as we move forward and work to contact our attorney to confirm the wording of this.
I texted Kate, apologies for interjecting second time. I texted Kate Reeves with her attorney and I have the resolution that Kathy, your colleague, put together, says husband and wife. And we change it to married couples. She said, yes.
Does that suffice for everybody?
I
On the,
screen this, I'm happy to share
the opinion of our legal counsel said that we can change the language, to still be within the law.
that. So I asked the resolution, can we change it to married couples? She said, yes.
So would you like me to follow up and ask within the law? I'm happy to do that.
So just quick process wise, I appreciate the process of how to do that, how to move forward, but stopping it. The language, I'm not gonna lie, read to me as being about as heterosexual as you can possibly imagine. It did not say me married couples, it said husband and wife. And so that was, I was thinking it was.
Okay,
Pat, you made the original motion. Right? There was a.
yeah, and also so do I amend the motion now?
If you're okay with
I
this.
accept a friendly amendment to my motion.
Fantastic. So now, board members, the motion that we would be voting on would be as written here, with the exception of in the be it resolved section where it says husband and wife 2 times, we would say married couples. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Oh, yeah, by law.
Right, we want to make sure it doesn't get validated. Any additional questions, conversations? You caught the change in the language?
No question. Will the resolution be sent by BSNK or do I need to edit that?
It has to be utilized by you, correct? That's a great question. I think we can also, I think you can make it once we are. And just put it on a document. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. If there's no other conversation, we'll call the question. All in favor? That is everyone who was present. Thank you very much. Item 12.5, 12.6, and 12.7 are part of a policy conversation we've been having about the DACA Act, Title IX, and sex discrimination procedures. What I will tell the community, they are put up here as discussion items. This does not change what the district is currently doing. We're trying to bring our policies up to date with what our practices are. So we are not planning on voting on these this evening. We wanted to make sure everyone had access to view them. They will be on the agenda for the next policy committee meeting. And folks can provide commentary, discussions, questions, nuances, etc. But we wanted to make sure that there was wider community public access to both of these. So there's no action that's required. Questions, comments? Fantastic. Item 12.8 is policy 6700, purchasing. This was a policy that's gone through finance, it's gone through the policy. It is presented here for a first reading and we will entertain motions.
I approve policy 6700 for purchasing for a first reading.
You guys work on it.
Somebody.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Yeah, that's right here. Policy 6150 is transfer of funds for a second reading and adoption this evening. It has gone through finance, it has gone through policy, it has gone to the board, it has gone back to policy, it is now to the board again for a second reading and adoption. We will entertain motions.
I move to approve policy 6150 transfers for second reading and adoption.
Second.
Thank you, Chris.
Moved by Pat, seconded by Chris. Questions or conversations, discussions? Hearing none, all in favor? That is unanimous for the people who are present. And then while it's 12.10 and 12.11, we'll read them together. It's policy, the investment policy. that we are revamping both the policy and the procedures at the request of our auditors. Again, finance, policy, board meeting, back to policy, now to board meeting again. That's up for a second reading and adoption. We'll entertain motion for the two of them.
I move to approve policy 6240 investment policy and policy 6240 procedures regarding investment for second readings and adoption.
Questions, discussion, conversation? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? That is the answer for everybody who is here. I hesitate to say that maybe there are no other discussion items for this evening's meeting. You can see the upcoming dates of importance. And with that being said, we'll bring tonight's meeting to a close. Thank you all for your patience and your work. Have a good